In this video, I'm going to run through a few in-depth demonstrations as to how to make your performance of a character feel more intimidating or ominous, featuring a simplified version of my character dream cosplay as it appears in Destrin's live-action short film, Execution. The way I made this character work was through a combination of two things, one being intention, and the other being deliberation. Dream knew exactly what he was going to do, and he did it exactly as intended. That's honestly the best tip I can give in terms of making any character, not just Dream, incredibly intimidating and powerful. The rest of this video dives into more specific examples and demonstrations. If what I just gave you was enough, feel free to click off, but I'd love it if you stuck around and saw not only what I did and continue to do as Dream, but also how to do it yourself. One of the most fundamental actions to learn is a character's walk and how they hold themselves while doing it. Given this is virtually the only way for a person in cosplay to get around, mastering the walk is crucial for giving off an imposing and unsettling demeanor. Surprisingly enough, the majority of the movement is in the shoulders and head, not the legs and feet. For the shoulders, it's rather simple. When one of your feet moves forward, that shoulder moves down and the other goes up with each step. Naturally, we already do this a little bit while walking, but you want to over-exaggerate that movement to just the right degree, increasing or decreasing it depending on your specific character. The head, however, is the complete opposite. Instead of adding movement like the shoulders, you're actually going to stabilize your head more than usual. As your weight shifts side to side with your shoulders and hips, you want to keep your head directly perpendicular with the ground, giving a more predator-like feel to your stature. Here's a very intense example of increasing the movement. This is from a Destrin film, The Occurrence, in which I played the entity in black, and a much more subtle version comes from an older Destrin film, Death Hunter 3, in which I play a creature known as the Death Hunter. As you may have seen with both of those examples, speed is not the key. Being deliberate is. Once you have the technique down, you can adjust your speed to however fast or slow you want. To restate the two main points, deliberation and intention are your main priorities. Once you're deliberate about the walk itself, you need to make that walk have some kind of purpose, or for the sake of this example, intent. Once you complete the walk, you don't want to keep moving around too much or look too casual. Instead, just stop. Abruptly. This will not only make your character feel inhuman, but it will also aid the idea that every move you make is precisely calculated, and you never do any more or less than you mean to. So again, just as a recap for walking, you are deliberate in your speed, intensity, and stature, and you intended to reach exactly where you ended up. Hopefully walking isn't the only thing you'll be doing in cosplay, that doesn't sound very exciting, but even while you're walking, you can easily incorporate various other gestures and movements into your behavior. This extended clip runs through a bunch of examples of deliberate movements, starting with a simple hood. Notice how, even after I've successfully removed the hood, I'm still very careful as to how I move my arms. You don't have to move as slowly as I do here, but deliberation is always key, and by moving slowly, I'm able to highlight that better. Now we switch to sheathing and unsheathing a weapon. Notice how over-exaggerated my hand and finger movements are, followed by how slowly I draw the sword. Changing various speeds and intensity will add to the realism of your character without making them feel too robotic. Quick tip, when wearing a mask and using a weapon simultaneously, find your sheath with your hand first before you actually sheath your weapon. That way you won't fumble for it and appear clumsy, further building up your character as more calculated and deliberate. The rest of this clip goes through various other subtle movements you can do that are less obvious, such as adjusting your cloak or your cosplay, which I assume you will have to do at various times throughout the day. Even though these movements are very subtle, and hardly anyone would notice most of them, you still want to keep in character as much as possible. Now, when I say as much as possible, I don't mean that as all the time. Obviously, don't forsake your own enjoyment for the purpose of the cool aesthetic, and be sure to let yourself relax from time to time. But when you're actively playing the character, you want to always be, to again restate my main points in the video, deliberate and intentional. When wearing any mask in cosplay, your field of view is going to be much more limited. Looking around is going to require a lot more head movement. Now, in order to maintain your ominous persona, you don't want to break character whenever you hear someone call your name or address you, because then it takes away from the act. Instead, you'll utilize a skill I taught previously, the abrupt stop. Whether you turn your head fast or not, your movement has a clear start and end point to add to your sense of inhumanity. Even if your back is turned, or you had no idea there was anyone else around you, you want to give off the illusion that you knew exactly when they were going to arrive, and you weren't remotely surprised or taken off guard by their appearance. It is important to maintain this illusion of knowledge and omnipotence because it leads everyone else to believe that you do, in fact, know everything, and that you have every step carefully planned out for an indeterminate amount of time. Moving on from necessary head movements, I'm going to demonstrate a much more specific gesture that has been associated with my representation of Dream, the head tilt. This movement in particular is one of several quirks I added to make the character more recognizable, and you can add as few or as many as you want to make your performance of a character uniquely yours. The Dream head tilt utilizes the same idea of an abrupt stop as before, but the speed of the tilt isn't uniform throughout either. In the span of a second, I start with a slower tilt, speed it up toward the middle, and then cut it short at the end, making it a very inhuman gesture. You almost want to visualize something being rolled off a table. It starts slower, speeds up, and then hits the floor and stops rather quickly. You can perform faster tilts, of course, in which case the varying speed throughout won't matter nearly as much as the slower ones, but you always want to make sure it ends with that abrupt cutoff. You don't want to tilt your head too fast, else you might hurt your neck, but you can vary the speed and intensity just like my other movements to give a more organic feel to the character. Perhaps the easiest thing to perform is the basic pose. To give off a commanding or unnerving presence, you'll want to make sure to strike some kind of pose that lets everyone know you're always alert and on guard, so no one would even consider catching you unawares. Oftentimes it's only one or two aspects of the pose that cue everyone in on that idea, such as a hand resting on a weapon, but whatever it may be, you always want to act as though you're in control of any situation and that you're the most powerful individual in the room. Body language is the only visual aid when it comes to characters that are fully masked, such as Dream. While many other characters have a face or voice to easily pick out in a crowd, how you stand, walk, and move will become the most memorable part of your character, and you want to make that as foreboding and intimidating as you can. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something useful today. If you enjoyed, share it around, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe below or to the side or wherever you do that nowadays, and I hope to see you all again soon. That's all for me. Peace.